And also worth mentioning today, like the whole just getting the vehicle off the pad is a complex endeavor. We are going to be trying to reduce complexity by attempting those hard water landings instead of trying a normal landing like you're used to on Falcon 9.
Exactly. We are not attempting to recover these vehicles, so yeah,
มา
hard
ดู
landings
การ
in store
ถ่าย
for
ทอด
both.
สดปล่อยจรวด
Now, in a little bit,
Starship
we'll take a closer look at the vehicle and the launch
จาก
pad. But first, the
SpaceX
teams have been doing a tremendous amount of work over the last few months. In fact, there's a great shot of our Hawthorne team up here bright and early to watch the launch.
นี่ก็ดูบรรยากาศ
Teams
ไป
have
ก่อน
been prepping really for the last few days, especially to try to get in today's launch attempt.
And here you can see a live view of the South Padre Amphitheater where both SpaceX employees, friends and family, and members of the public are gathering to watch Starship lift off. And we can see the crowds are gathering there as well. And of course, we want to give a shout out to the SpaceX team. You see them there on screen, members of our launch command, our Star Command Center. That is our Star-based Launch Control Center.
Yep, those are the operators today who are going to be reviewing all the data and, of course, giving us the go, no-go poll, checking the status to try to get in today's launch attempt just around 27 minutes from now.
And one thing I do want to mention, I misspoke. It's not the South Padre Amphitheater. It's the Cameron County Amphitheater.
Now, the entire Starship structure on your screen is made from stainless steel. When it's stacked, it stands about 120 meters tall. It's about 9 meters around. And we have this awesome video that shows you just how big that is. You can see one of our technicians there doing some final prep work in advance of today's test. And man, there's the 120-meter monster.
The person just keeps getting smaller and smaller. Now, just like Falcon 9, Starship has 2 stages, which we'll talk more about those in a minute. In addition to those 2 stages, Starship actually has a 3rd stage, which we call Stage 0. It consists of all the launch pad infrastructure built around the rocket, as you can see there on your screen, and it's truly an engineering feat in its own right.
Yeah, we've got a great shot there of the various different components of it, the pad, the infrastructure, all that is required to get into filling the tanks. Now, let's talk about the Super Heavy. Its name says everything. It's super, it's heavy, it's super heavy. When it's operational, it'll be responsible for providing the power to escape that
ท่อนล่างมันเรียก Super Heavy
and take Starship into orbit.
The booster itself stands about 70 meters tall and is roughly the same height as a fully integrated Falcon 9, which is so crazy to me. But this super heavy booster has a diameter roughly 2.5 times that of Falcon 9 and with 33 much larger engines. We have a beautiful view here. This is one of my favorite views that we're going to get today. Those are our 33 Raptor engines at the base of the super heavy booster.
Yep, and you can see they're in a couple of different
ways here. Raptor engine เครื่องยนต์ Raptor
static engines. They're going to be providing a huge amount of thrust today
33 เครื่อง
to lift off the entire stack. But then we've got the 13 gimbaling engines in the middle, and they're going to be providing the tilt maneuvers and also helping to reorient the booster as it comes back later in today's flight.
Yeah, and when we say gimbal, it's basically tilting or almost wiggling the engines a few degrees and in either direction to allow the booster to steer itself, just as you said, Shiva.
And we'll get some great shots later of actually a wiggle test that we perform ahead of liftoff, just to make sure that all those engines are able to control their full range of control authority.
One thing to note, those Raptor engines are completely designed and manufactured in-house. They are, as many of you know that have been following along, they are a reusable methane oxygen staged combustion type engine. So it's a lot of words there. And ultimately, that staged combustion means that we combust the propellant in stages. We kind of pre-combust them in a pre-burner, and by doing so, it allows the engine to be more efficient, i.e. more powerful.
Yeah. Now, like Falcon 9, the Super Heavy has 4 grid fins to assist with orienting itself in its return back to Earth. We got a shot of them there.
ตอนนี้นับถอยหลังเหลือ
Now, as we talked about earlier, Super Heavy is not attempting a land landing today, but with this flight test, we're still trying to get as much data as we can. We're focusing on the fundamental systems and operations, so that's the liftoff portion. But we are going to try to get some data on how the fins work and for that water landing that Super Heavy is going to be making after ascent.
I love that great view of the fins there. Now, Starship, or the spacecraft, is the second stage, and it makes up the top portion of the vehicle.
ข้างบนนี่เรียกว่า
It's designed for
Starship
carrying passengers and
ข้าง
cargo
ล่าง
to
นี่เรียก
Earth
ว่า
orbit and
Super
beyond.
Heavy
It stands about 50 meters tall, which is a little taller than the Statue of Liberty. It's comprised of 6 Raptor engines, 3 sea level and 3 vacuum engines, which are optimized to operate in the vacuum of space. And they provide a maximum of 258,000 tons of thrust in vacuum. Spacecraft is also outfitted with 4 flaps to help aerodynamically control the vehicle's
มีปีก
attitude, which
ช่วย
you can
บังคับ
see
ทิศ
those 2
อยู่
forward
4
flaps
อัน
there on your screen now. So they help control the vehicle's attitude during
1
atmospheric flight and
บน
enable
2 อัน
precise
ข้างล่าง
landing at the intended
อีก
location.
2 เป็น
Now, one thing we got to mention, the heat shields. They are iconic. Starship is wrapped in a heat shield,
Heat
which
shield
is composed of 18,000
ไอ้
hexagonal
แผ่น
ceramic
ป้องกัน
tiles
ความร้อน
designed to
ทำ
insulate
จาก
the
เซรามิก
vehicle during that atmospheric entry. And that's really important because the temperatures can be as high as 2,600 degrees Fahrenheit. The hex-shaped tiles, like the ones that Shiva and I have,
2,600 องศา
roughly
เซ
make
ล
up
เซียส
about 2/3 of the vehicle. We can see that we have some different shapes. Mine is slightly curved, as you can imagine. It
มี
sits
หลาย
on
รูป
the
แบบ
curved
Heat
portion
Shield
of the
ป้อง
Starship vehicle.
แผ่น
Now,
ป้อง
the one
กัน
that I've
ความร้อน
got is a hexagonal tile that's more flat, and it's really used for the flatter structures on the vehicle. And we need a heat shield because when you're coming back in from re-entry, we're going supersonic, we're compressing
เอาไว้
all the
ใช้
air
เวลา
ahead of us.
กลับ
That
เข้า
ends up causing a lot of
บรร
heating
ยากาศ
along
โล
the
ก
surface, and
ป้องกัน
without
ความ
a heat
ร้อน
shield, that would go straight into the structure.
Yeah, one thing
จาก
that's
การเสียด
amazing
สี
to
ของ
me,
บรรยา
especially
กาศ
when I first picked up one of these heat shield tiles, is that they're so light. They almost feel like they're made out of foam. They're that light, and they kind of sound like it too. And one thing that we do want to mention, in order to reject the maximum amount of
บอก
heat during
ท
that entry,
ำวัสดุ
like
คล้าย
Shiva
โฟ
was
ม
just
แล้วก็
saying,
ช่วย
they're
ให้น้ำหนัก
black,
เบา
and that's because black helps reject that heat that is building up on the exterior of the heat shield.
Now, Starship is designed for vertical takeoff and landing as opposed to taking off and landing like an airplane. And that's because that's really important because we don't have runways on the moon or Mars. Fortunately, at those destinations, the gravity is not as high as it is here on Earth. On Mars, the gravity is just 1/3 of what it is here on Earth, and on the moon, it's just a sixth. So in both of those
อัน
cases,
นี้นับ
Starship
ถอย
with
หลัง
just
อยู่
its engines can take off without needing the super heavy
21
booster
นาที
like we do need here on planet Earth.
Now, for today's test, Starship does not have its landing legs attached because, like we said before, it won't be returning anywhere. Starship is expected to make a very hard ocean landing, which, if we even make it that far and manage to get any views, it will certainly make for a very exciting end to
ออก
today's
ขากลับ
test.
จะลง
At this point in time, we are 20 minutes or just
ไม่
over
เรียกอะไร
20
จะลง
minutes
จอด
from
ในทะเล
liftoff. Let's check in with John Innsbrucker for a status update. Hey, John, how's it looking?
Thanks, Kate. I'm John Innsbrucker, Principal Integration Engineer here at SpaceX. We're currently loading
ขากลับ
propellant
จะ
from
ล
the
งจอด
ground system
ใน
into
มหา
both
สมุท
the
ร
first and second stages. Now, both vehicles use the same 2 propellants. That commonality helps build the reliability. And the fuel today is liquid methane. And that's at a temperature of just over 100 kelvins.
Liquid methane
That's about minus 272 degrees below zero on the Fahrenheit scale.
เชื้อเพลิง
Now, liquid
ทำจาก
methane is a different fuel from
มี
Falcon
เทนเหล
9.
ว
That booster
CH4
uses RP1 kerosene. However, our oxidizer is liquid oxygen, and that's
แล้ว
the
ก็
same as
liquid
Falcon 9.
oxygen
Because there is no oxygen in space to support combustion, we have to bring our own.
LOX
Now,
นี่คือ
leading up to where we are
liquid
right now, we
oxygen
had a go-no-go poll that was conducted just
เอาไว้
after
ใช้เวลาอยู่
2 hours.
ในอวกาศ
And once the team gave their goes, we started loading propellants onto the booster at T-minus 1 hour
อันนี้มัน
and
ผัง
39
ผัง
minutes.
ของยานอวกาศ
T-minus 1 hour and 22 minutes, we began propellant loading of the ship. The second stage you can see on your screen right there. Now, propellant loading of the Starship's second stage main tanks completed at about the T-minus 27-minute mark, at which time we then began loading the 2 header tanks in the nose
ก็
of
มาลุ้น
the
ว่ามัน
second
จะ
stage.
ขึ้นถึงอวกาศหรือเปล่า
Now, at T-minus 3 minutes, when the first stage super heavy propellant loading completes, that means we'll have all the propellant on the rocket, and the vehicle will be fully loaded with over 10 million pounds of propellant. Now, right now, at T-minus 19 minutes and counting from liftoff, the weather and winds are looking good. We have been watching the ground level winds. They're at 18 miles an hour as the morning continues, they will increase, but that is below our limits right now. We're also looking at upper altitude winds. We're waiting for one more balloon, but we believe that we're going to be
ใสวันนี้
on the launch vehicle itself. The teams, the good news, they're not working any issues right now. But if for some reason we do not make our test flight today, if we have to hold, we have a backup launch window. However, we're not sure when it would be. It could be 24 or 48 hours after today. It'll depend on how far we get into the countdown. But right now,
ตอนนี้ยังไม่มีปัญหาอะไรที่น่าเป็นห่วง
13:28 Universal Time. Kate, everything is looking good.
Awesome news. Now, in order to make life multiplanetary, we need a fully reusable vehicle that's capable of carrying a huge amount of cargo and a lot of people to orbit and have a pretty quick turnaround. The idea is to effectively reuse launch vehicles just like airplanes.
Yeah, imagine if you had to wait for a new airplane to be constructed every time you wanted to fly. You'd rarely go anywhere, and for most of us, it would be completely unaffordable. In order for us to get to Mars and back with lots of people, lots of cargo, multiple times, reusability really is a
นี่มันจะเป็นจรวดที่เอามากลับมาใช้ใหม่ได้ทั้งท่อนบนและท่อนล่างทั้งท่อนบนกับท่อนล่างเอากลับมาใช้ใหม่ได้หมดช่วยประหยัดค่าใช้จ่าย
Now, in the near term and a bit closer to home, Starship will also be critical to other programs. Once fully operational, it'll deliver the full-size and upgraded version of our Starlink satellites, and that's super exciting because our next generation
แล้วมันก็จะเอาไว้ส่งดาวเทียม Starlink
in Starlink's capabilities
เนี่ยวิธีส่งดาวเทียม
millions of more people around the world with high-speed
เอา
internet.
Starlink ซ้อนกันไว้แล้วก็ปล่อยออกมาจาก
Such an exciting
Starship
future ahead of us, but first, let's talk a little about how we got to where we are today.
Now, Starship's testing ramped up in July of 2019 with our Starhopper prototype, sort of a short version of the Starship that we see today. There's a great photo of it. It was just over 18 meters tall. It had a single Raptor engine, and we had it to test fly and perform low-level altitude maneuvers and attempt landing. The initial test flight, or hop, reached about 20 meters in altitude. That was followed by the one that you've got on your screen here. This was our 150-meter altitude hop.
ออกัส2019 สิงหาขึ้นไป150 เมตร Starhopper
and actually this hopper is actually down at Starbase now.
Yeah, I love this shot. It's
อันนี้
just so
โปร
fun
โต
to
ไทป์
see
เรียกว่า
it fly.
Starhopper
After a series of 150-meter hop tests with earlier prototypes, the Starship program saw a major breakthrough during a test flight of the vehicle known as serial number 8. Or SN8. You can see it there on your screen now. In December 2020, SN8 demonstrated a first-of-its-kind controlled aerodynamic descent and landing flip maneuver. 2 words, belly flop. The SN8 prototype rose to an altitude of 12.5 kilometers or 7.8 miles and conducted a belly flop maneuver, which you see there, during its descent. While it didn't stick the landing, the test was a major milestone in the development of Starship.
เครื่องยนต์
In fact, we should be able to see that unfortunately failed landing. Boom. It was fun to watch though.
Rapid unscheduled disassembly, but learned a lot of data.
SN8 มันลงจอดไม่ได้มันระเบิด
Continued on to prototype serial number 9. It took a 10-kilometer flight. It's about 6.2 miles up. In February of 2021, we had a
ทดสอบที่ 6.2 ไมล์ เดือนกุมภาพันธ์
We did that belly flop maneuver, which is so much more fun to say than controlled descent, aerodynamic maneuver. That was all stable.
เอาตูดลงก็เรียก belly flop.
We had a dramatic
เอา
end
ตู
on
ด
this flight
จรวด
as
ลง
well. We had a failure on one of the
แล้วพอ
engines
ใกล้
that
ลงถึงก็เปิด
resulted in another
เปิด engine
pretty large
ให้มันชะล
fireball.
อความเร็ว
But what was really cool about both of those flights was how much we learned just between serial numbers 8 and 9 and how quickly we were able to achieve
SN9 ก็
our
ระเบิด
primary objectives in those 2 flights. In addition to that, we got so much data that demonstrated control of the vehicle in that subsonic regime.
Ultimately, we performed 9 Starship high-altitude test flights in total, and then, as you see on your screen there, in May of 2021, SN15 launched from Starbase, reached an altitude of about 10 kilometers, performed a number of maneuvers, and safely returned to the launch site. This was the first Starship prototype to fly, control its descent, safely land, and be recovered in one piece.
And people were cheering like crazy
I was
after
one of
that
them.
test flight.
อันนี้มัน
Now,
วันนี้
having
มัน
achieved those
รหัส
successes
S
in our
24 B 7
campaign, one of the next big challenges is for
มี
the
สอง
upper
ท่อน
stage
ท่อนบน
when it
กับ
comes
ท่อน
to
ล่าง
reusability and surviving the hypersonic, really high heating phase of entry. Combined with the later ability to refill Starship's tank with propellants, the fuel and oxygen, while we're on orbit, that will enable us to have a fully reusable transportation system that's designed to carry both
สามารถ
crew
เอามา
and
ใช้ใหม่ได้
cargo on
reuse
long duration missions, interplanetary flights, and will help
reusable
humanity get to the moon, travel to Mars, and beyond in our solar system.
reusable
This is all just basically our path of progress, basically an iteration on each vehicle, and that iterative
อั
process
นนี้เหลือ
is
อีก
a
12
core
นาที
part
จะปล่อย
of
จ
how
รวด
we work here at SpaceX.
T
We
minus
like to test early and often,
12 นาที 50
publicly
วิ
as
นา
well
ที
in our case, and that's both
Starship
for hardware
Flight
and
Test
software. And while it doesn't always go as expected, we learn so much from it, and it informs our next attempt.
Yeah, we learn a lot from actually putting the vehicle through flight-like tests. Even the test
ตอนนี้
on
เติมเชื้อ
Monday
เพลิงอยู่
gave us an opportunity to learn more
Liquid
about the vehicle
methane กับ
into today's launch
liquid
attempt, and
oxygen
so far things are looking really good. Now we are continuing into our countdown. We're about T minus 12 minutes to go. I think it's a perfect time for
T
another
minus
check-in with John
12
Sparker.
อีก
How's it going, John?
12 นาที
Well, Shiva, the good news is that the nets are quiet. The teams are currently working. No significant launch vehicle issues. You can see the T clock there on your screen. T
อันนี้
minus
มัน
12
แผน
minutes,
ผัง
10 seconds,
ถัง
and
เชื้อเพลิง
counting. Propellant loading is continuing
เติม
on
ไป
both the Super Heavy
97%
and the ship
CH4
stages.
นี่คือมี
You
เท
can see
น
the graphic on the left-hand side of the screen.
LOX
Most recently,
liquid
we
oxygen
began loading liquid oxygen and liquid methane fuel into the header tanks
liquid
on
methane
Starship. Those
CH4
are two small tanks just underneath the nose of the second stage.
อันนี้เติมไป
Now, that started at
97% ละ
T-minus 27
ข้างล่าง
minutes.
เติมไป
That will be wrapping up at about
85%
that will be wrapping up
liquid
about
methane
T-minus
กับ
9 minutes.
liquid oxygen
Now the Starship second stage main fuel and LOX tanks are loaded for flight right now.
เติมเชื้อเพลิงไป
The super heavy first
97%
stage booster
กับ
propellant loading is
85%
continuing, and that'll go till about T-minus 3 minutes.
เหลืออีก 11 นาที
We're underway with engine chill as we get ready for T0, and we're also configuring the launch pad for liftoff. The booster hold downs have been unlatched. They'll be ready to retract at liftoff, and the second stage quick disconnect is beginning its configuration for release. The methane and liquid oxygen propellants currently going to the second stage go through that quick disconnect. That's that arm that reaches out from the tower to the base of the second stage. The SpaceX team continues to check in with the Coast Guard. Good news is we've not heard any reports of boats in the safety perimeter as the launch vehicle heads out over the Gulf of Mexico. So right now, T-minus 10 minutes, 40 seconds, and counting. Everything continues to go well for an on-time launch.
Now, today's test flight is taking place out of our Starbase facility in South Texas, and that test site has gone through a huge amount of development over the last couple of years.
One thing I want to point out, this is a great view from our drone. Not only can we see the pad, but in the fog, kind of in the distance, in the background and to the left of the pad, you can actually see our production facility, which is the other part of Starbase in addition to the launch pad.
Of course, as part of rapidly iterating with our test program, we're also rapidly iterating on our production system to produce Starships
เหลือ
and
อีก
Super
10 นา
Heavies.
ที
Last year, the Starbase team produced 4 Starship Super Heavy boosters and 5 Starships, along with their 200th Raptor 2 engine, and they're only scaling up from there, Kate.
Yeah, it's incredible to think that for 2023, production has 5 boosters and 8 Starships going. So it's incredible. And it's important to have that system fill in basically the manufacturing line so that we have product ready to go as soon as we're done with this test.
Yeah, exactly. And ultimately, I mean, we talked about how Starship is an order of magnitude more propellant,
บอกพอทดสอบนี้เสร็จก็
orbit. But if you're gonna go
มี
set up a
Starship
base on the moon
สร้าง
or
ไว้
Mars, you're
สำรอง
gonna need thousands of metric tons of
ถ้า
propellants. And so
ถ้า
you're
อัน
gonna
นี้
need
ระเบิด
a
ก็
vehicle
สามารถ
that's capable of
เอา
doing
อีกอัน
that.
นึงมาใช้ต่อได้
One
เลย
thing to note, Starbase directly employs more than 1,800 employees. It's the largest employer in the area, in fact. And we're very thankful to Cameron County for being so supportive. This is a view from the Cameron County Amphitheater, and it there's a crowd there, and you could tell by the energy here in Hawthorne as well that everyone's getting really exciting. I feel my own heart rate going up and up.
I know it must be really, really exciting to go see this. And I mean, just the sheer amount of power on Starship, you're going to feel it down there when this thing lifts off from the pad. We've actually got a great shot here of the natural surroundings around the pad. Oddly enough, most of the pads end up being around sort of wild locations like this. But coming up on T-minus 8 minutes, I think it's another good time for check-in with John.
เหลืออีก8 นาที
T-minus just over 8 minutes to the first test flight of Starship. Currently, we are pressurizing second stage. We are also closing out liquid oxygen and fuel header loads on the second stage. We're also getting ready for propellant load tank pressurization on the first stage. In fact, we are just now closing out header tank load on the second stage. Now with the header tanks loaded and closed out, that means we're down to just the first stage.
Oh.
To finish loading, that'll finish about T-minus 3 minutes. And at that point, when both stages are loaded, we will have the 10 million pounds of liquid propellant on board.
10 million pounds.
Now in the next few minutes, the guidance system will begin its final alignment for
อ๋อ
flight
ยานเปล่า
during the quiet period when
ยัง
the
ไม่มี
rocket's
นัก
not
บินอว
doing
กาศ
anything.
อันนี้แค่เทส
Automated flight termination system will be armed, and a final
เทสบิน
TVC
ขึ้น
checkout
ขึ้นอว
will be
กาศ
performed. Those are the engine wiggles, and hopefully we'll be able to see that with the cameras underneath the vehicle and maybe
อัน
even
นี้
the
รอ
second
เติม
stage
น้ำมัน
engines.
ไปเติม
There's a
เชื้อ
view
เพลิง
looking underneath
liquid
the super heavy
oxygen
first stage with
กับ
the
liquid
33
methane
Raptor engines. Now, a reminder as we continue counting down, if we do need to hold, the point where we hold the clock would be at T-minus 40 seconds. We can pause there. Typically in the past, if we need a little bit more time to finish final checkouts or do some pressurization of the onboard storage tanks, that's where we would hold. But currently, we're not hearing a need to hold. So at 6 minutes, 27 seconds, everything looks good. And of course, Kate Shiva, as we get close, we're going to get into the engine ignition sequence
เห
of
ลืออีก
33
6
Raptors,
นา
and
ที
that's going to be something new for everybody.
I cannot wait for that moment. So for those of you that are familiar with how we launch Falcon 9 rockets, you probably know that we light all 9 of those first stage Merlin 1D engines all at once. It's pretty different than what we do or what we're attempting to do today. We're actually going to be igniting those 33 engines in banks or clusters, and that sequence starts at T-minus 6 seconds.
Yeah, and the ignition sequence is a little bit different, both in terms of the timing and also the ignition method. So on Falcon 9, we use a chemical called TTAB. It's a pyrophoric material, so that means when you mix the two together, it produces a flame that kicks off that green characteristic spark on Falcon 9 missions. But actually on Starship, we use electrical ignition systems. Many of those are integrated on the ground system here. And the electrical ignition, we start lighting the banks at T-minus 6 seconds, and then over the next 4 seconds, the 3 sets of banks will ignite and eventually bring the booster up to a thrust to weight greater than 1 and hopefully ascent.
Super exciting. Like we said, pretty different from our Falcon 9 launches, and so this will be the first time that any of us have gotten to see this type of integrated test
เหลืออี
flight
ก
with both
5
the
นาที
Starship and the Super Heavy booster.
Everyone cheering as we get into T-minus 5 minutes.
We want to remind everyone that success today is anything.
อ๋อก็คงติดเครื่องเซ็นเซอร์ไว้วัดข้อมูลหลายอย่าง
Today, success is anything that we learn that helps improve the
เพราะว่ามัน
future
เป็น
build
เทส
of
ไฟล์
Starship.
ว่าคง
If we
ต้อง
lift
หา
off and clear the
เก็บ
pad,
Data
we're calling
ห
that
ลาย
a
ๆ อย่าง
win.
ก่อนที่จะเอามนุษย์ขึ้นไป
Great shot of the pad there. Great shot of the quick disconnect on the second stage. You can see the frost line on the booster where that methane is fully topped up. I think we're just coming up on the last few minutes here of propellant fill on the booster. That quick disconnect is going to separate away as we actually get into the ignition sequence, but it's providing electrical connections now
เหลืออีก4 นาที
also providing the propellants that we're loading into the vehicle.
Yeah. We're just now under 4
ดูว่ามัน
minutes
จะขึ้นไปได้หรือเปล่า
liftoff of the Starship Flight Test. We've been following along for what honestly seems like days and days now, but really it kind of comes down to years. It has been a long time to get to where we are today. Now, fast forwarding a little bit, we have the opportunity to hold, if necessary, at 40 seconds, and we are able to hold there for about 15 minutes or up to 15 minutes.
ถ้ามีปัญหาอาจจะหยุดตอนช่วงเหลืออีก40 วินาทีถ้าว่าจรวดมีปัญหาก่อนจะปล่อย
we don't have the opportunity to hold. So
เหลื
that's
อ
a
อีก
whole new capability.
3 นาที
Right now, T minus 3 minutes, 10 seconds and counting. We got some great views from the drone. It's nice that the fog is slowly lifting. We get some of the blue skies, hopefully good views. What we're waiting for right now is closeout of propellant loading on the first stage. That should be wrapping up here shortly. In fact, it looks like fuel fill and drain valves are coming closed. That means first stage is fully loaded, second stage fully loaded, and that 10 million pounds of propellant on board the Starship launch vehicle.
I want to take a quick moment to say that the crowd energy here is electric. I feel like it's Falcon Heavy test demo all over again.
And hopefully you'll hear us as we get into the plus count. But right now, next activity is coming up. The flight termination system arms at T minus 2 minutes. Thrust vector control.
รู้สึกว่ารอบนี้จะจอดในมหาสมุทรไม่ได้จอดที่พื้น ลงจอดที่มหาสมุทรในทะเล33 เครื่องยนต์ Raptor Engine เหลืออีกนาที อันนี้ยังไม่ได้ลงที่แขนรู้สึกว่าจะลงเอาไปลงทะเลก่อน
Love this view. These are the 33
Test
Raptor engines
Flight
at the
Test
base of the super heavy booster. I think we can see
เรียก
those
เที่ยวบิน
vehicles
ทด
now.
สอบ
We're currently inside 90 seconds. Next major activity, T minus 40 seconds. That is a gate, a decision point.
เหลืออีก1 นาทีจะเริ่มนับถอยหลังแล้ว
Flight termination system is armed for flight. We're getting ready for T minus 1
รู้สึกว่าจะจอดลงทะเลไปเลยอ่ะเหลือ50 วิเดี๋ยวมาลุ้นกันว่ามันจะขึ้นไปได้หรือเปล่า40 วิอันนี้ยังไม่มีปัญหาถ้ามีปัญหามันจะหยุดอยู่ตรง40 วิอันนี้มันจะมี2ท่อนบนกับท่อนล่างโอ้แซ่เป็นไรวะเนี่ยรีสตาร์ทเวลาเนี่ย
Okay, you can see the clock.
สงสัยจะมีปัญหา ยังไม่ได้ปล่อย
Flight director has called a hold. We are recycling. For the moment, we'll see where they move the clock back to. They could hold at T minus 40 seconds.
จะเลื่อนไปแล้วแต่ไม่รู้ว่าจะเลื่อนไปนานขนาดไหน
Give us a minute to listen into the nets, and we'll see if we can get you more information to share.
มีอะไรติดขัดไม่รู้เนี่ย เดี๋ยวต้องดูว่าเขาจะเลื่อนไปอีกนานขนาดไหนเจอปัญหาอะไรไม่รู้เนี่ย อันนี้คือเลื่อนปล่อยแต่ไม่รู้ว่าเจอปัญหาเลยยังตอนนี้เขายังไม่ได้บอกว่าเจอปัญหาอะไรเลื่อนไปนานขนาดไหนยังไม่รู้เขาดาวโฮ for final launch โฮอันนี้หยุดนับถอยหลังก่อนเช็ครอเช็คว่ามีปัญหาอะไรไม่รู้อะไรเจ๊งหรือเปล่า
John Innsbrucker again here at the Hawthorne webcast desk. We're holding at T-minus 40 seconds. What we've heard so far is we have a couple of issues we're working. One is the booster tank pressurization. Final pressurization was just a little bit long. That's not unusual. We've held at T-minus 40 seconds before to pressurize. That appears to have been resolved. At the same time on the second stage, they're working some final purging. We should know very shortly if that is cleared and if we'll continue the countdown.
มีปัญหาเรื่องความดันแต่ว่ารู้สึกว่าจะแก้ได้แล้ว
Like John said, we should know shortly
ความดันมัน เพี้ยนไปหน่อย
As mentioned before, we are able to hold up to 15 minutes and still be able to lift off today.
บอกจะเลื่อนไปอีก15 นาที
Once we start propellant loading, we pretty much have to go at the targeted time. Otherwise,
เลื่อนไปอีก15 นาที
and we may not have the performance for that particular mission profile. It's a little bit different on Starship.
If I can interrupt.
Yeah.
เมื่อกี้ความดันมันเพี้ยนไปนิดนึง
At T-minus 40 seconds.
That is amazing news.
Amazing.
Team working quickly through their issues on first and second.
ตอนนี้แก้ได้แล้ว
And I'm sure all of the rehearsals and simulations that they've been doing have prepared them to evaluate this data quickly to try to get us in for today's launch attempt.
มีปัญหาเรื่องความดัน
For those of you just joining, we have a brief hold at the T-minus 40-second mark. The team is resolving one issue with the bleed purge on the Stage 2 Raptors. Like John just said, the teams are quickly working that, and it looks like the flags are being cleared as we speak. So we should be able to resume the launch countdown any moment now.
And it's worth noting,
เดี๋ยวจะเริ่มเขาดาวน์ใหม่
once we resume the countdown, it restarts from the 40-second period, and then we keep going unless another condition pops up. So stick around because Starship could be going here real soon.
Don't walk away, that's for sure. Amazing views here coming to us from Starbase Texas.
เดี๋ยวจะเริ่มกลับมาเขาดาวน์ใหม่เราจะปล่อยแล้วเหลืออีก30 วิ26 25 23 22จะได้ปล่อยหรือเปล่าเนี่ยอีก16 15 10 วินาที 9 8 7 6 5 4 จุดระเบิดแล้วขึ้นไปแล้ว ดูว่าจะขึ้นไปถึงไหนลุ้นว่ามันจะไปถึงอวกาศหรือเปล่าขึ้นไปแล้ว lift off ขึ้นไปแล้วตำรวจ2 ท่อนStarship นี่ดูความเร็ว260 กิโลเมตรดูว่าจะขึ้นไปถึงไหน Altitude 1 กิโลเมตรความสูง1 กิโลเมตรจะไปถึงอวกาศหรือเปล่าอันนี้มันมี2 ท่อนบนกับท่อนล่างท่อนบนสีดำท่อนล่างสีขาวอันนี้มันเทสไปอวกาศก่อน
throttle down and throttle back up.
อันนี้
Going through the period of
ปล่อยจรวด
aerodynamic
ขึ้น
pressure.
อวกาศครั้งแรก
As the velocity increases, the density of the atmosphere is
ความเร็ว
decreasing.
800 กิโลเมตรต่อชั่วโมง ความสูง 9 กิโลเมตร
Continuing to watch the first stage as we head down range.
อันนี้ยังไม่ได้ไปดาวอังคารขึ้นไปถึงแค่อวกาศเฉย
100 seconds into flight.
15 กิโล
Our next major activity is going to be shutdown of the first
จะถึง
stage.
หรือเปล่าเนี่ย
Houston Tracking Station now acquiring the vehicle. With shutdown, we will get separation of Starship from Super Heavy.
1,500 กิโลเมตรต่อชั่วโมง
When Starship
ความสูง
separates,
20 กิโลเมตร
we'll light up 6 engines in a staggered sequence. And if all goes well, those 6 engines will
เดี๋ยวว่าไปถึงอวกาศ
burn
แล้วมัน
for
จะแยกกัน
6.5 minutes. Onboard view from Starship.
นี่กล้องถ่ายจาก Starship
And there's views of the Raptor engines on the second stage as we prepare for stage separation. Now, after stage separation, the first stage will flip and begin a boost back maneuver for landing in the Gulf.
เครื่องยนต์เหมือนมันเอาไว้บาลานซ์ด้วย น่าจะบาลานซ์มันอาจจะไม่แน่ใจมันติดไม่ครบด้วย
2 minutes 40 seconds. Let's get ready for main engine cutoff.
มันจะแยกส่วนแล้วมาดูตามแยกส่วน
Flip for stage separation.
เฮ้ย ไปไหนวะเนี่ยเมื่อกี้ไม่ทันมองแล้วสงสัยจะถึงว่าจะอวกาศเนี่ย ดูเหมือนจะไม่รอด สงสัยน่าจะไม่รอดละ
As of right now, we are awaiting stage separation.
มันจะ
Starship should separate from
มันจะ
Super Heavy booster.
มันไม่แยกส่วนกันนะมันจะต้องแยกส่วนกันแล้วไงบอกมันต้อง separate แล้ว
Right now, it looks like we saw the start of the flip, but obviously we're seeing from the ground cameras the entire Starship stack continuing to rotate. We should have had separation by now. Obviously, this is does not appear to be a nominal situation.
มันไม่แยกกันนะ
It does
จ
appear
ริง
to
ๆ
be
มันต้องแยกกันนะ
but
มันไม่แยก
I
กัน
want
นะ
to remind everyone
นี่
that
ควงสว่านแล้วเนี่ย
everything after clearing
จะไป
the
ตกตรงไหน
tower
อะ
was icing on the cake.
ระเบิดแล้ว ไม่เหลือ
And there, as you saw, as we promised, an exciting end to the Starship inaugural integrated test flight.
ไปไม่ถึงมันตอนมัน separate มันไม่แยกกันไง
Everyone here absolutely pumped
ระเบิดไปแล้ว
and make it this far into the test flight, the first
สรุปว่า
integrated
ไปไม่ถึงอวกาศ
of the booster and the Starship vehicle.
Live view there of our control center at Starbase, which we refer to as Star Command.
จริงมันต้องแยกส่วนกันในท่อนล่างกับท่อนบนอันนี้มันไม่แยกส่วน แล้วมันก็ควงอยู่งั้นน่ะควงเสร็จสักพักเขาคง
Well, if you're just joining us,
กดจุดระเบิด
just experienced what we call a rapid unscheduled disassembly or a RUD during ascent. But now this was a development test. This is the first test flight of Starship, and the goal was to
การ
gather
ท
the
ดสอบ
data,
ครั้งแรก
and as we said, clear the pad and get ready to go again. So you never know exactly what's going to happen, but as we promised, excitement is guaranteed.
แต่ว่านี่มันเป็น
Starship gave us a
เพิ่ง
rather
เทสครั้งแรกไง
spectacular end, what was truly an incredible test thus far.
บอกเดี๋ยวมี
As we mentioned
มี
at
เท
the
สครั้ง
start
ต่อไปอี
of
ก
today's program, any and all the data that we collected during the test is going to help us with further development of Starship. And it's
สร้าง
gonna improve
สร้าง
the
ไว้หลาย
vehicle
ลำอยู่
as SpaceX seeks to make life multiplanetary. It's really worth noting that the flight path was designed to be over water and all the air and sea space along with that flight path. And
จ
those
ริงๆมัน
surrounding
ต้อง
areas
แยกส่วน
cleared
มัน
in
ไม่แยก
advance
ส่วน
of the test. and of course we're going to be
มันก็เลยไปไม่ถึงอวกาศ
for the recovery operations.
But honestly, what an exciting morning. Oh my gosh. We had a successful liftoff from Starbase, Texas at 8:28 a.m. Central Time. We cleared the tower, which
เดี๋ยวต้อง
honestly
รอว่า
was
ไอ้
our only hope.
ครั้งถัดไป
We cleared the
ครั้ง
tower
ถัดไป
and
จะ
all
ท
the
ดสอบ
data
ตอนไหน
collected all the way through all those Raptor, those 33, although I think we saw that 3 Raptor engines were out. But we got all that data.
แล้วว่า
and, we
ไอ้
got
ยาน
so
Starship
far
มัน
as
สร้างไว้
to
หลายลำอยู่
see the Starship, the second stage, separate from the first stage, the Super Heavy booster. And unfortunately, we didn't make that happen, but that's okay. It was the first integrated launch, and honestly,
สรุปว่าไปไม่ถึงอวกาศ
Absolutely incredible day. We made it through a number of those initial test objectives with getting booster ascent,
ควง
getting all the way
หมุน
through
ควงสว่านก่อน
working some issues at the end. Like really
Totally
fantastic
tanked,
day.
got through the gate at T-minus 40 seconds on the second try. Everything released, the hold downs, the quick disconnect arms, everything moves out of the way. And then we got the vehicle off of the pad through max Q all the way up to stage separation.
มียาน
into the prep for
มัน
stage
สร้างไว้
seven.
หลายลำ
And
อยู่
then as we
สตาร์
say,
ยาน
a lot of
Starship
excitement.
สร้างไว้เผื่อทดสอบ
My face has had a smile on it since liftoff, and now my face hurts. Now, since we don't have any insights on the cause of our rapid unscheduled disassembly at this point, we're going to end our webcast here.
ตอนนี้ยังไม่รู้ว่าทำไมมันถึงไม่แยกส่วนตอนขึ้นไป จริงๆมันต้องแยก
Before we go, a big congrats
ไอ้
to the
ส่วนบนกับส่วนล่างมันต้อง
team on an
ต้องแยก
exciting
ส่วนกัน
first integrated flight test of
พอไม่
Starship.
แยกส่วนมันก็เลยไปไม่ถึงอวกาศ
And of course, a shout out to our viewers. We appreciate you joining us. And as always, we thank you for your interest in Starship, SpaceX, and your ongoing support. Till next time.
โอเค วันนี้ก็จบลงแล้ว สรุปไปไม่ถึงอวกาศ แต่ว่าเดี๋ยวมันจะมีเทสอีก จะมีเทสทดสอบยานขึ้นอวกาศอีก แต่ว่าต้องรอว่าเขาจะบอกมาว่าวันไหน แต่ยานสร้างเสร็จแล้ว แต่ว่ารอว่าจะเลื่อนไปทดสอบอีกวันไหน โอเค วันนี้เจอกันสวัสดี รอเจอรอบหน้าทดสอบยิงสตาร์ชิปขึ้นอวกาศ นี้ก็สวัสดีแค่นี้ก่อนครับ สวัสดี